Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. Have you ever noticed that many safety goals fail before the end of February? Why is that? And what can we do about it? That's exactly what we're going to explore on today's episode, which is a recording of a recent safety roundtable. Hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with Christian Harris. We believe that proactive safety and risk management powers business performance. Each week we explore this theme, sharing guests, stories, insights, trends, hints and tips. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, and video versions are available on YouTube. But for now, let's join the conversation with Christian.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining today's Safety Roundtable session. I'm on location today, as you can see by a different background than usual if you're eagle-eyed. I'm actually at the Occupational Health and Safety Forum in London, so I've taken an hour out of a day of busy meetings with some safety professionals to come and do the Safety Roundtable, because we've got to keep on schedule as best we can. I apologise. 2 weeks ago, I was due to do this session and I had to cancel it. I was on death's door with this horrible virus that's been going around. You can probably hear I still am a little bit croaky and a little bit bunged up. So I'm looking forward to getting some help today with everybody that's here with us to interact and speak and maybe carry me through this one. But got to try and keep on schedule as best we can. So I'd scheduled this session for January because it's all about goal setting, and I thought January was the time to do that. We've had to do it in February instead, but it's still a valuable session, and I think it'll be an interesting conversation. The insight, I suppose, that I've had is that a lot of the time when I speak to people about goal setting, both in safety and in life in general, is that a lot of goals don't get met. And so I thought I'd explore why that is and what we can do differently to try and improve upon that. So that's kind of the intention for today's session. And as always, hopefully get you guys that are joining on Zoom into the discussion as well. You have to excuse me if I randomly start coughing. Just very quickly, if you've not been to one of these sessions before, the Safety Roundtable happens every 2 weeks, unless I'm terribly ill or on holiday, and it's a live interactive Zoom. We cover a different topic each time, and it could be me and a guest, but the idea is to introduce a topic and then have an open discussion about it. So if you get some value from this and you enjoy it, then do invite any fellow safety professionals, safety and risk professionals that you know to join us. So today, what I'm hoping that we are going to get out of this is to run through, and hopefully you'll understand then some of the pitfalls of the traditional way that we set goals within safety. And then we'll talk about some frameworks and a slightly different approach that we can take for 2025, or at least if you've already set your goals for this year, maybe we can learn something and try and improve our goal setting for next year. So let's start with asking this question, and hopefully somebody will, or a couple of people might be happy to jump on and share their thoughts. If you are on the Zoom with us, go to reactions and raise your hand, and I'll invite you up to speak. Interested to know what are some of the challenges that you've had, or what's been your biggest challenge in the past with setting safety goals? What is it that you've struggled with? What is it that you've had to overwork to overcome? Where have you found difficulty with this before? Or perhaps everybody on here has found it really easy and it's always been a doddle and we've never had any problems. But yeah, if you've got any examples of challenges you've had with setting safety goals, be really keen to hear those if you want to go to reactions and and raise your hand. Somebody needs to be brave. Chris, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, yeah, thank you, Christian. Just for those who don't know me, my name's Chris Scholl. I work for Wilson James, based at Heathrow Airport. We work in the passengers with reduced mobility and the assistance passengers. Now, I would say the main issue we've had with safety goals over the years is a lot of our staff have been two-peed over through multiple companies over the years. So some of our staff have been on that site in that contract for 15, 20 years. But actually, what they've seen is 5 or 6, maybe even 7 different management companies have come in. All of them
Yep.
have had different safety goals, different processes, different cultures. And actually, trying to get them to engage with our ones essentially wipes out the first sort of 2 or 3 years of that contract, trying to
Yep.
get them to show them this is the new culture we want, this is our safety goals, and actually get them to understand and take that on board. I think
Yep.
that's been one of the big issues we've seen over the years.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. Interesting, isn't it? And actually, you've touched on one of the points that I'm going to be covering today, which is where are we now, and what are some of the blockers and the challenges, and what's going on with our team and the people, and thinking about the context in which we're trying to set these goals. But yeah, I'm sure that's an example that a lot of people that would resonate with a lot of people, particularly if they're in that kind of FM kind of space, or like you guys are in obviously security, where you do have contracts changing hands, and lots of staff, as you say, through Chupi changing hands and so on and so forth. So I'm sure that would resonate with other people as well. Okay, if anybody else wants to share, feel free to put your hand up, and I'll call you up. But let's keep progressing. So I've spoken a lot about my belief that we in the safety world need to be able to speak the language of business, which is all about numbers. And so we need to be able to translate what we do into something that is measurable, quantifiable, easily understood by the C-suite, the board, the decision makers, the CEO, the MD, whoever it might be, the FD. And so you might expect me in that context to say, what we need to do with our goals is we need to put it into a number. But actually, what I've found is that can be the root cause of the problem with the goal. I'll try and explain why. And as always, guys, if you've got any thoughts or comments, just raise your hand and we can come and chat about it. Definitely looking for interventions and thoughts. So why should we not focus on the metrics, or what are the problems of focusing on the metrics first? So what you'll often see is, we want to improve our whatever safety metric it is by 20%, or let's hit 0 lost time injuries, or whatever it might be. And we've spoken about zero harm and the fallacy of that before. We won't get dragged into that today. But let's think more about, right, we want to improve or reduce by 20%. And obviously the assumption there is that we've quantified this goal, it's very clear, and therefore we're going to meet it, or we're going to, at least by quantifying that goal and setting it out clearly, that the actions that we need to hit that goal are going to happen. But in my experience, that's not enough on its own. We need to think about this strategically, and we need to think about the behavior, the culture, the practical reality of where we are and what we're doing as an organization, and what's actually reasonable for us to achieve. And that's where people, I think, go wrong. We don't pick up on those things. So if we don't align the goals with, I suppose, our organization's vision, our purpose, and our current reality, how we're feeling, how we're performing, what are the big rocks, shall we say, from the perspective of, sometimes you have really important things, rocks, and then you have pebbles that you need to achieve. We've got to be aligning ourselves within our safety goals to the overall purpose of the organization. If we set goals that feel kind of disconnected from what the business's objectives are, which typically is, profit, productivity, customer service, things like that, excuse me, then it's going to become secondary. It's going to become box ticking exercise, and it's just not going to work. So the point about speaking the language of business is all about influencing and ensuring that safety is perceived by the right people as a strategic enabler so that it's improving efficiency, reducing costs, enhancing reputation, driving up customer service, etc., etc., etc. And it's aligning with what we need to do as an organization. And that's how we can get this buy-in and get the results. Lee, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I think you're right there. It's how we align the business with goals, whether they be social, behavioural, cultural, psychological. But a good business case, which I presented once, was environmental social governance, ESG, sustainability. It's fresh in everybody's tongues, and everybody's relying on the existing and already in position safety professionals to maybe touch on that a little bit for a business as a strategic enabler. And that's really important, because when we're setting goals, or when we was tasked to look at these sorts of things, one of the alignment strategies that we looked at is, what is the business already doing? And can you actually make it look easier in terms of goal setting and align that with already existing business elements, such as, like, maybe you're already giving to charity, you're maybe already reducing your carbon footprint, and unknowingly they are actually goals which are already being achieved, which actually makes it more understandable for one, and realistic to the business, that they can actually push it a little bit further. So I think aligning existing goals and making the business recognise that they've already achieved a good onset of goals, and said you've already done some hard work, makes it also measurable for the business to take that next step forward. So I think maybe a lot of businesses are achieving goals and don't realise that, and sometimes we have to really point those things out before we start putting our stamp on things.
Yep. And we definitely don't want to be, that safety person who is kind of trying to stamp something on to the rest of the organization that actually they don't want to do, because that's also going to lead to failure. Because if people aren't buying into it and the reason for it, they're just not. They're just not
a lot of
it.
goals, not achieving goals, is probably a lack of understanding of the journey that you need to get there. The journey needs to be flexible. Obviously, it needs to be. You can use the analogy SMART, can't you? That acronym SMART all day long.
Yep.
But if the business don't understand what it is or where it's going, then again, the probably can't keep sight of that goal, because the journey doesn't have to be a straight line from A to B. It's very winding, isn't it? It has to be flexible.
Most journeys are. Yeah, most journeys are. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thanks, Lee. Nicholas, you got your hand up.
Yeah, hi, Christian. Very topical on the mobile device issue within businesses, which is our specialist area. And, this current sort of mindset that a driver's handbook signature is going to stop a driver from utilising a mobile device while they're at work in the vehicle. It's just not working. And people need, and businesses need, to have a look at better processes that are out there to be able to manage the interaction and limit it while they're on the move. Especially the delivery companies. Both you and I see that on a daily basis. A very poor run. And again, like I say, you're right. It needs to be come down from the top tier of management. But if there is um, no justification or no willingness to do anything, it's getting really frustrating out there to obviously improve road safety.
Mm, mm, yeah. Um, if anybody hasn't heard my backstory and the reason that I'm involved in safety, it's because I was run over when I was walking down the pavement by a car that lost control and mounted the curb and ploughed into me. We don't believe that the driver was on her telephone, but I'm definitely an advocate for road safety off the back of that. So definitely
Yeah.
with you on that one.
Well, that's why I'm in road safety too. My son was involved in an incident with a HGV driver who was on his mobile device.
Mm,
And it's very dear to my heart. And I'm just seeing no practical move forward to, like I say, put any proper management in there on interaction when a driver should be concentrating 100% on getting from A to B as safely as possible.
yeah, yeah. Definitely, yeah. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
So there's often this kind of disconnect between goals and the day-to-day realities, and that's a good example that we just spoke about there. We can set these ambitious targets, but what are the constraints? So, those delivery drivers, what are the constraints on them? Well, actually, they're under the gun. Uh, they've got so many deliveries to make per day. They've got bad traffic. They've got people breaking down. They've got a lot of pressure. They've maybe got vehicles that aren't, in some cases, the best. They've got annoying customers who are complaining at them. They've got people beeping their horns at them because they're parking in the wrong places and so on and so forth. So what are the operational constraints on those people? Well, they're potentially quite significant. And do those guys and girls even know what these goals are or how they relate to what they're supposed to be doing? Possibly not. So I think it's about communication, it's about ownership, it's about accountability, it's about making sure that cascades all the way down, as we spoke about before. Anybody's got any examples of that? Feel free to put their hands up and share in terms of some of these problems that we've been speaking about. Anybody else that wants to share anything, then feel free to do so. So how do we overcome this? And I suppose this is the crux of what I wanted to speak about today. I think that there are three key pillars that we need to understand, cover, focus on before we start setting these goals. And if we do that and we look at these three pillars well first, then I think we can start to set some goals that are smart, as was just mentioned, that are realistic, that are achievable, and that is vision, so defining the why, reality, which is understanding where you are as an organization and as people, and then action, creating a practical plan. Let's forget safety for the moment. Let's think about us as individuals. We could sit here on New Year's Eve and we could easily say, right, my goal for this year is I've got two goals. I've got a financial goal where I want to earn an extra 10% than I currently earn. And I've got a fitness goal and I want to lose 10% of my body weight this year. I'll just use two lots of 10% to keep it simple. That's great. That's a quantifiable goal and something we can measure. And I always think it's good to be able to measure things. But does that align with the vision of our life? Might those two objectives be competitive? Actually, if we said we want to lose weight, maybe we need to go to the gym for an hour every day. But maybe by going to the gym for an hour every day, we're unable to improve our financial outcomes because we can't work as hard. So we need to understand the vision of where we're going and why we're going there to be able to set goals that we can sort of stick to and achieve. What's our reality? If you are already earning in the top 5% or whatever of your industry, how realistic is it to earn 10% more? Or if you're earning in the lower quartile of your industry, how realistic is it to earn 10% more? Do you have the skills? Do you have the right CV? Do you have the opportunity to do that? If you are, significantly overweight, you might think, well, losing 10% is quite easy. But, the reality is if you're significantly overweight and it's not a medical issue, then you've probably got some motivational challenges or some challenges with your lifestyle in terms of eating or moving. And is it realistic to really shift that significantly to achieve that goal? So we need to really understand, where we are and and have a bit of a reality check and a look in the mirror. And I think this is important on safety because we often feel as if we're doing a good job, and we probably are doing a good job, but the difference between doing a good job and a great job could be, significant in terms of the outcomes and therefore the ability to meet any goals that we set. And then thirdly, an action plan. Well, it's all well and good to say I want to earn 10% more, or I want to lose 10% of weight. What are the concrete steps that we can put into place? What's our strategy around doing that? Rather than just saying we're going to do this, what are we actually going to do about it? And if we don't get that piece in place, it's going to be very, very hard for us to meet those goals. So that's kind of thinking about it from a personal level, but this applies equally as well in the safety world too. So thinking about the vision, this is all about why we're doing what we're doing from a safety perspective. So why is it that safety matters beyond compliance? Is it about well-being? Is it about trust? Is it about efficiency? And we should be linking our safety goals with the organization's values and mission and vision. Most businesses, most organizations are going to have some kind of origin story, a vision and a mission, and we need to be linking our safety goals in some way, shape or form with that mission, vision and with the values. Excuse me, rather than just plonking out an injury rate target. And we need to get our colleagues to be emotionally invested and emotionally connected to the safety goals because it's protecting them. It's protecting their families and their livelihoods. It's protecting their colleagues. It's protecting their work environment. It's protecting their future. So we've got to get this why to be felt by everybody, I believe, and that's how we can start to really get this embedded emotionally. So rather than saying, we want to reduce our slip accidents by 20% within a retail sector, maybe we say we want to create an environment where every customer and employee feels secure and protected. And so that's a commitment rather than a number, and that's going to make it more motivating. Now, I'm not saying we don't have a number in there somewhere because obviously if we can't, it's hard to measure if everybody feels secure and protected. But as part of an overall goal setting exercise, sort of realigning that vision around safety, I think is an important thing that we can do that will give us a better chance of achieving our safety goals. What do we think about that from the perspective of, those of you that are on the call? To what extent does your organization have a clear safety vision? Or maybe not your current company, but maybe other organizations you've worked with, because we don't want to be criticizing our current employers, obviously, but, have you seen examples where organizations have had a good vision around safety? Or has it just been around hitting compliance targets, all around the numbers, box ticking, etc., etc.? If you've got any thoughts on that, do feel free to raise your hand and come and have a chat. Reality, if we move on to that, this is all about understanding where you are. So a lot of goals fail and hopefully those examples I gave you a minute ago would bring this to life a bit. Ottilia said in the chat, I've seen places where it's all about having a sign up or a banner, but no real commitment and certainly no action. Yeah, I'm sure we can all think of examples of safety washing. So yeah, lots of goals fail because we're just not conscious enough of our current reality, the constraints on us, and the resources that we have or don't have. So what we need to be doing is really looking in the mirror and thinking, right, almost taking a beginner's mind, I would suggest, looking at this fresh. Imagine you haven't worked for your organization for 5 years, but imagine you're brand new into the job and you're going to review everything that's happening and do it dispassionately with a beginner's mind. What is already working? You know, are the policies good? Is it the training? Is it the leadership buy-in? Where are the gaps? Engagement, budget constraints, reporting, whatever it might be. What behaviors need to change? Whenever I ask the question of safety professionals, how often how often when you take a new safety role, do you find things that can be improved upon? Pretty much 80-90% of people say always or very often. So we always feel as if we can do things better. The challenge, the pushback is, excuse me. Well, if we think we can always improve on things if we take a new role, you know, that probably means we can improve on things where we are. So have a look in the mirror. Have a fresh set of eyes on what you're doing, and really understand where you are, both within safety and the organisation, and that will help to drive what we can do around goals. Lee.
Yeah, there's a comment in the thing about putting a banner up and not really much commitment. And I was talking to someone who was new to a business, and they came into the business and they had this vision of where the business needs to be. And I think the relationship with the people with the vision and maybe the owners of the company didn't quite align. And I think the owners need to set the vision, or the senior echelons of the business needs to set the vision. And when he released his vision statement, I looked at this vision statement and thought, these are really good. I can buy into this, but how are we going to achieve it? But I actually responded to the vision statement, and I think the vision statement, like the comments there, was rhetorical in nature. It just thought it would happen, you know, and people would know where it needed to be or how we would get there. And when I responded to the vision statement saying, well, my department will buy into this, but we need to do the training. We need to have the commitment, the financial sacrifice. We need to have the effort there. We need to have some sort of structure to achieve this. And the line of communication went slowly dead, you know, because I think more and more he wanted people to buy into the idea, irrelevance of what would need, and he didn't know what he wanted his company or his teams to do. It was a very good vision statement. And I think he also realized that by saying this outwardly, before actually structuring it first, he probably put his head on a little bit of a chopping block with the people that was under him. And I think that really set the theme of, are we going to achieve this? And that's really, and I think before we set goals, we must talk to the people who are going to achieve them for us, in my opinion.
Yeah. Spot on. Yeah, spot on. And what happened after that? You know, was there a change, an update, or did he sort of plow on with it? And
no, there was nothing in the boardroom. There was nothing in terms of making sure that the training on our education needed to restructure in a way that the financial commitment was there. It went from visionary statement to production, and this is what we need to achieve. But you're already achieving it with an overstretched, undertrained, and underpaid workforce. So this new vision now is changed the scope of the business and people's mentality, whether you wanted to that happen or not. But now you've just jumped onto the next thing is, well, we need to increase our profits without. So I think in essence, the time frame when you look at goal setting is really important, because if you give a business a 5 year plan, the business has to be flexible enough to maybe look at that in 6 years, because your first year is really setting the structure, isn't it? It's setting the infrastructure for the business, the organisational changes. People might want to shift positions to achieve something better, talent recognition to get that goal. All those things that need acquiring within the business needs to be set within the first 12 months. And I think what you said, things being done in a timely manner, sometimes the time constraints to do that are too short, which puts a lot of people in, and then you get an half cut, then you get something which is nearly there. We nearly did it. Let's move on to the next thing. So that's really important for me. Is the time frame has to be realistic,
Yeah.
to actually start structuring it, moving into the plan, achieving the plan, and then keep making sure that that end goal is actually ticked at the end. That the goal is ticked, or
Yeah.
I slightly misaligned and achieve something else. I think that time, and having a real time frame for achieving the goals with the structure and everything, and the retraining education is paramount for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thanks, Lee. Definitely, that's great insights there. Richard, you got your hand up. How are you?
Hi, Christian. I'd agree with everything that Lee's just said. And one of the things I've seen in so many companies I've been into working for the trade association is every goal, regardless of whether it's production, whether it's efficiency, whether it's sales, whether it's health and safety, they're adamant on having these linear progressive targets, because if it looks like a constant shift downwards or upwards on the graph, it looks really good. And when you're talking about making significant changes and potentially putting in new cultures, a whole load of training, these all take time to embed. And the instant you miss a target on a linear progression, people think, oh, well, we failed, so we stop. I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding in terms of what it actually means to progress, and things will happen quickly in some areas, happen less quickly in others, and getting the right knowledge and information out through lower management and supervisors is just as important as well. So if people are thinking, how do I improve my production efficiency? And I've got my machines working as fast as I can. What else is stopping your machines working? It's trying to get them to have that epiphany of, well, if I did better maintenance on my safety guards and I didn't keep having machine downtime and I didn't keep having accidents, by default, I've got more production. So I've got more productivity. I've got more out the door. I reduce scrap by not restarting machines. So everything should improve, and it's trying to tie in what health and safety can do for production and for the business, as opposed to people thinking, well, you've got your process going, now I want to stop everything with health and safety. So
yeah, I had a conversation.
We're our own worst enemies at times.
Yeah, I had a conversation this morning with a safety professional at this event I'm at, and he has worked in facilities in the past as well. And he said, one of the things he's seen over the years is this kind of shaving off of cost around planned preventative maintenance, which is kind of what you've said there exactly. And he said, yeah, you can shave off a few pennies here and a few pennies there, or a few pounds here or a few pounds there. But the problem is that has a knock-on effect that's going to cost you in the tens or the hundreds of thousands, which is kind of unseen. And so you're sort of saving your budget on a day-by-day basis, but you're building up a bigger cost and a bigger issue for the organization without really understanding it. And I think, spot on.
But given the difference in how easy it is for somebody to win a civil claim versus for the HSE to bring a criminal prosecution, and if nobody did anything else at all whatsoever in health and safety, they've still got a big expense if you're a manufacturing business, because of the fact you have to have employers' liability insurance. And we all know insurance companies like to put up premiums and take money from us. The only way to prevent that happening is to actually spend money in other areas to try and bring your risk profile down.
Yeah. Sorry to say, but insurance company, like all of us that have a business, insurance companies try and make a profit as well. So they will raise premiums if but in my experience, if they expect that their costs are going to go up, but in my experience, those premiums can come down if you can exhibit and prove to them and convince them that you're doing good proactive risk management. So it doesn't always go that way in my experience, but definitely is something to think about, the fact that that cost is there for sure. Adiolapo, you wanted to say something. Do you want to unmute?
Yes, good afternoon, Christian. So, the previous organization I worked in, we had, I remember the German director, he had a meeting once a month where he called all team leads in terms of various sections. I was the safety officer and was in construction. And he was always asking, how can we improve our safety practices and any concerns is going on within the site industry? But his knowledge and his knowledge wide open. And on so many occasions, we tried that and it was effective. The mental health of the workers improved. A lot of safety regulations were also adhered to because I also updated them about consequences of taking some certain actions. Yes, like you previously said also, as regards the whole cutting cost and everything, yes, I had to deal with that in few times, but his commitment to that actually helped a lot of the workers within the site. They were always prompt to work. They were always putting in their best, and they didn't have anything to hold them back. And so each time I'm always discussing with them about what's your goal for the year, and they willingly share the goal because they saw that the management also had.
Thanks. I was losing you a little bit there, I'm afraid. So I'm gonna struggle to give a good response to that, but I'll make sure to listen back. It might just be my headphones here, but thank you for joining in. So let's think about this kind of reality. Here's an example, right? A manufacturing company, we want to eliminate hand injuries, but if we don't look at why the injuries are happening, we're negating our reality. If we find that, for example, kind of what Richard was saying in a sense, workers are rushing on production lines because they've got unrealistic quotas. You know, we've got to balance off production and safety. We've got to address that balance and redress the way that that's working. Let's think about changing work schedules, adding protective gloves, rather than just putting in an arbitrary goal. And then the third pillar that I mentioned was action. So putting a practical plan in place. So we've got to be realistic and balancing ambition with feasibility. Now, all of us on this call, I'm sure, would love to say, we want zero harm. If you're in safety, you don't want to see people getting hurt, but we've got to be realistic. How feasible is it to achieve zero harm? The reality is, it's pretty difficult in most sectors, depending on how you define harm, obviously. Maybe one of the ways that we can do this is, rather than having annual targets, we might have quarterly milestones to keep the goals relevant. One thing that I really liked that somebody spoke to me about before, not in a safety context, was I think he called it the magic moment. And what he meant by that was how would you know, what would be the feeling, that magic moment for somebody that you knew you were on track. So maybe thinking about that is a way of discussing this. Lee.
Yeah, I've got a quite a small story. I hope it's small. Anyway, it's and when I first went to my previous employer, I found that in there was a dog eat dog culture. It was very much if it went wrong, keep it quiet sort of culture. So I sat down and the team member I brought in, because I was asked to go there to sort it all out after a series of not just incidents, but environmental incidents as well as an expert witness, and they brought me in. And one of those things is how are we going to get people to buy in? And we actually set out, both of us, on our site inspections to see after the site inspection how many people would pick up the phone and actually say to us, how do I do this on your inspection? Or what does this mean on your inspection report? Or where would I find this piece of document? Because it was quite archaic, and it was very behind the times when I first took over. And we used to sit there after our inspections, in that week, and think, well, nobody's picked up the phone again. You know what I mean? And that was one small goal that we actually achieved, where when the first person picked up the phone, we actually responded in a way where we went to site and supported him, and we didn't go down like the previous guys and slam him with a load of non-conformances because he's phoned us up, which gave us an opportunity, which gave the old regime an opportunity to pick fault. So what we went down there with an open mind, an open door policy. He's phoned us up. That's brave to phone an health and safety guy up and say something's wrong. And we went down, sorted the problem, and that then permeated within the business. He spoke to the next site manager. So by the time we finished, the ethos for the site managers is anything wrong with health and safety, let's not make a decision. Let's phone the experts. Let's phone the people who get paid to do this. And that was one of small goals which I found quite satisfying. And when somebody picks up the phone and phones you, how we respond is so important. And that goal, we achieved it. So, and that's about goals, isn't it, as well? Those things that you set yourself within a business as well to really sort of set the milestones, like you're saying there, and taking ownership and accountability. Accountability isn't all about punishment, is it? Accountability is about positive outcomes as well.
Yeah. I mean, I was doing some goal setting yesterday for my business, and with one of my sort of business coaches, I suppose you'd call him, and he said, right, that's a target we've got for this year. Whose name's going against that? Who's going to be accountable for it? Not from the perspective of, negativity, but from a positive perspective of, I'm going to give you this ownership, and this is your, bag, and actually this is what you're going to focus on for the year, and be positive about it to make sure we get there. So go on, Paul, you got your hand up.
Sorry, I've been listening on LinkedIn and wondered why I couldn't find put the hand up thing.
There you
So
go.
I've now joined on Zoom.
Good man.
So it was just back to this idea of goals and safety goals, and I think what always strikes me is the way we view them. And that is what I mean by that is if you think back to like the old HSG 65 model, it has inputs, process, and outputs. Where would you put safety? And it's an output, right? So when we look at how we get better at safety, we need to look at, in my construction field, is how we do planning, how we do design, how we do engineering. Not that you can't do safety. And I think this is the thing that we all struggle with, that we come up with this random number where, take the number of accidents, divide it by the total number of hours worked and multiply it by 200,000 if it's OSHA.
Yeah.
And then measure performance to 2 decimal places. I mean, we're doomed to fail. We're doomed to fail. And I think it's incumbent on us as kind of safety professionals to kind of try and refocus the message away from whether it's zero, whether it's because if you say the target is 0.8, right, are you then allowing them to injure so many people and still meet the target? You leave yourself open to those kind of challenges, right? And I think finally, I'll wrap up. The bit that I think we struggle with is we've fallen into this saying that was accredited to Peter Drucker: "What gets measured gets managed," right? And in fact, it wasn't Peter Drucker. I'm sure you're aware. It was a guy called Ridgway. Can't remember his name, but something Ridgway in the 50s. And the full quote is, "What gets measured gets managed, even when it's pointless to measure and manage it, and even if it harms the purpose of the organisation to do so." Right?
Yeah.
Context is everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as long as we focus on, here's the target, we want to cut the target by 20%. It's impossible. Impossible, because incidents are random. They can occur at any point. You can have 3 in a day and then go 6 months without any, doing exactly the same thing. So I think the interesting thing for me around all this was, how do we frame safety goals rather than getting into the weeds, if any of that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely does, and exactly that is kind of exactly what I've been trying to say, I suppose, which is, what's the vision, what's the reality, what's the plan, what's the action, and making it, and not just throwing stuff out there. So yeah, definitely agree with you on that one. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to start to wrap up. But so, just an example of an action plan then, rather than let's say a hotel chain, we want to cut our number of guest slip accidents by X. Let's not do that. Let's actually create a plan. So let's do some slip risk audits. Let's get some slip testing done. Let's put in place some training for cleaning staff on best practices. Let's put some anti-slip solutions in high-risk zones like our swimming pool and guest bathrooms and places like that. And then let's review the data and adjust strategies based on the results. So we do want to be measuring some stuff around the inputs, but maybe we don't necessarily be forcing measurement of the output so much. So I would say, in my experience, most safety goals fail, not because, I'm not saying most safety goals fail, but when they do fail, it's not because they're too ambitious, but it's because there's a lack of clarity, they're perhaps not realistic enough, and they don't have this structured action plan. So I think when we are thinking about goal setting, we need to take a step back, think about the vision, think about the current reality, and think about the action plan. And that's where actually going right back to the start around the language of business, we can turn safety from a kind of compliance tick box exercise into something that is really driving a business outcome, really driving profit, really driving a competitive advantage, and of course, at the same time as that, keeping more people safe as well. That's it from me, guys. I'm happy to take any final interventions if anybody's got them. But thank you for joining today's session. I hope you've got something from it. Let me know. Whack a post on LinkedIn or something, and let me know some feedback. And actually, whenever you're next setting some goals, share that on LinkedIn or wherever you want to share it, and say, look, this is the reason we're doing this. This is the vision. This is the reality, etc., etc. And I think that'd be really valuable for other people. Nicholas.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate on something that we tend to forget, that the workplace is not just in a factory; it's also out on the roads, and we seem, especially the HSCs, seems to forget of obviously the responsibility they have to overlook that area, and it's a shame that it's always concentrated, like I say, in a building rather than as a whole of an industry. Yeah,
agreed. We need to look at this holistically. and even people working from home, and people's mental health. It's not just about, as you say, in the workplace. It's about what we can do for our colleagues and often our friends, to keep them safer, and what we can do at the same time to drive the organisation forward. Good stuff. Well, thank you very much. Sorry, go on.
Just thank you for your time, Christian.
Yeah, pleasure. No, thank you for joining in. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. Hope you found that useful, and look forward to seeing you again on another safety roundtable in the future.
Thanks for joining us on the Safety and Risk Success podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit follow and do share on social media. Does anyone you know spring to mind as a great guest, even yourself? If so, please contact us on podcast@slipsafety.co.uk. See you next week for another episode.